Representative Talarico, thanks for the time. And you are, I guess, still in Chicago. Is that a fact?
Unfortunately, I wish I was back in Austin, Texas this morning.
All right, let's start with the decision. Why was it made to make this trip from Austin to Chicago and break quorum in the Texas House?
Right. 57 Texas Democratic legislators made this decision to leave our beloved state and come up here to Illinois to break quorum and stop Trump's redistricting power grab. And that may be confusing to people. So let me just quickly explain. State legislators like me, we typically adjust district boundaries at the beginning of every decade to adjust for population changes after a new census. And our Republican colleagues in Texas did that in 2021. But now Trump is asking them to redraw the Texas maps because he wants 5 more seats, because he's worried about losing his majority in Congress in the next election, because he's starting wars and wrecking the economy and kicking millions of people off their health care. So the president is trying to shield himself from the voters. He's trying to shield himself from accountability. That's not how this American system is supposed to work. And it's a threat to all Texans, not just Democrats, but independents and Republicans too. Politicians shouldn't be choosing their voters. Voters should be choosing their politicians.
Let's talk specifically about this map that was released last week. We've seen major changes in metropolitan areas like Austin. What do you think could come from the action that you and your colleagues have taken? Do you see there being any concessions, any changes to that, or is this just delaying what could be inevitable with the vote on this map ultimately taking place?
Well, you mentioned this being a threat to the people of Central Texas. One of these maps draws some of our Central Texas residents into a district that goes all the way to the Texas coast. I mean, it's insane, and it disrupts the democratic process. It silences our voices and prevents the people of our state from electing new leaders. I mean, that's how this democratic process is supposed to work. But when politicians draw the lines, when they draw our districts into crazy shapes, they are manufacturing the outcome they want in the election. They are insulating themselves from the will of the public, and nothing could be more undemocratic or un-American. My colleagues and I are ready to do whatever it takes to stop this map from going through. I should say we were at the state capitol for the first 2 weeks of this special session. We tried so hard to work with our Republican colleagues across the aisle to prevent this from happening. We urged them to prioritize flood victims and flood relief, which they refused to do. Instead, Governor Abbott used those flood victims in the Hill Country and across Central Texas as leverage to do Donald Trump's bidding and pass these rigged maps.
So you mentioned the president, and this seems to be something coming from the top. And when he speaks, it seems like Republicans in Texas at all levels listen to what he has to say. I don't know if it's for fear of their own position or for their strength in numbers, but do you think that having him involved is making it any more, giving them any more pressure to follow through with this map?
I do. And gerrymandering is when you draw these districts into crazy shapes. It's a weird word, but that's what it means. And it happens in all states, and it happens in both political parties. Democrats do it in blue states, Republicans do it in red states. Republicans did it in Texas in 2021, and we didn't break quorum. What's unusual here is that, one, the request is coming directly from the President of the United States. I would hope that a Texas governor would be able to tell the president, regardless of their party, not to mess with Texas. But unfortunately, when Donald Trump says jump, Greg Abbott asks how high. And that's what we're seeing here. The second unusual thing is that this is happening in the middle of the decade. Again, I said earlier that these redistricting plans usually come out at the beginning of a decade. We already did that 4 years ago. It's basically like two teams coming out of the locker room at halftime, and the team that's ahead says they want to change the rules in the second half to stay ahead. I mean, it's cheating, plain and simple. And so if the Republicans are going to cheat, we're not going to play.
It can get expensive to do what you all are doing. You know that. Not just staying there outside of the state, but the fines that can be imposed upon you per day can add up after a while. How are you all paying for that?
I'm ready to pay for these fines myself. And believe me, I don't have that kind of money right now. And so, this is going to be painful financially for me. You know that state legislators in Texas only make about $600 a month before taxes as part of our state rep job. We all have day jobs to be able to make ends meet, and many of us are leaving behind those day jobs to take this stand. Some of my colleagues are leaving behind young children. Some of them are leaving behind aging parents. So this was not a decision we made lightly. We did this because we were forced to do so by our Republican colleagues. They pushed us to this point. And ultimately, despite the costs, whether it's personal, financial, or political, my colleagues and I are ready to take a stand for our constituents. And not just Democrats. We are fighting for our independent and Republican constituents too, because we need free and fair elections for everyone in every community. That is how this democracy is supposed to work, and we're ready to do whatever it takes to protect the American experiment.
Couple of more things. James Talarico, thanks so much for taking the time for us here in Austin this morning. The governor has said whoever's not there at 3 o'clock today could be removed from membership in the House. Do those words concern you?
You know, I think it's funny that Greg Abbott is so tough on social media when it comes to us Democrats, but when Donald Trump tells him to mess with Texas, he's ready to oblige. He bends the knee. So I'd love to see that same attitude, that same toughness when it comes to him dealing with the president, rather than just calling us out on social media. But like I said, I think my colleagues and I are ready to pay whatever price, whether it's political or financial or personal, to take this stand. You know, we're here in Illinois, the land of Lincoln, and it's appropriate because Abraham Lincoln broke quorum as a state senator back in 1840 by jumping out of the window of the Illinois state capitol. Thankfully, I didn't have to jump out of any windows yesterday, but we are participating in a very long American tradition of standing up to bullies, of civil disobedience, of good trouble. And so we're ready to pay whatever price may come.
I have to ask, flood victims in Texas still dealing with a lot of the aftermath from that. Of course, that's been a topic of this special session as well. How do you address the people that are saying, with you there, that can't get done either?
Well, we have Texas families that are burying their dead as we speak. Those flood victims deserve immediate action. And the Republicans had 2 weeks of the special session to get it done. They haven't even filed a bill because they are using those flood victims as leverage. They want to put it after redistricting so that we're giving away our voices, giving away our democracy to help our flood victims in Central Texas. Greg Abbott has the power right now to transfer funds to help those victims. We could have passed a flood relief plan in the first 2 weeks of the session. We begged our Republican colleagues to do so. I think it's disgusting that the Republican majority is using Central Texans, flood victims, some of the people I represent, as leverage to play these political games. It is politics at its worst, and those flood victims and those families deserve so much better than what Greg Abbott is doing right now.
Finally, I listened, like millions of others, to your interview with Joe Rogan, and you talked extensively about bipartisanship and how that has been something you've taken pride in being able to accomplish as a state representative. Specifically the maps, but more broadly, anything. Is there something bipartisan about these maps that you all could come to a conclusion on? And is there an issue in Texas that a bipartisan decision amongst all lawmakers could come together for?
Not these maps. These maps are a blatant power grab to please Donald Trump. And I love my Republican colleagues. I work with them on a whole host of issues, and we would love to be working with them right now to get relief for the Hill Country and for the flood victims across Central Texas. But they have pushed us to this point. And I learned at a very early age that the only way to stop a bully is to stand up to them. And I still have love for my Republican colleagues, and I still want to work with them, but not when they are going to do the president's bidding and silence the voices of my constituents and Texans across the state. That's unacceptable. And the way I show love is by standing up to them and telling them no, that this is unlawful, it's wrong, and I'm going to do everything I can to stop them.
All right, State Representative James Talarico. Hey, before I let you go, what do you do when you're in Chicago on a break from the House of Representatives here? What does a day look like?
Well, it's anything but a break. We are working all day, all week. We still have constituent services that we've got to provide to the folks that I represent. that our job continues even when we're not in the state of Texas. And then we're also trying to shine a national spotlight on what Texas Republicans are doing and what Donald Trump is doing. So I'm going to be talking to folks like you all across the country today and throughout the week. So this is a working trip. We are still on the job, even though we're not in the state of Texas.
State Representative James Talarico, we are so grateful for your time. Thank you for joining us here on KVUE this Monday morning.
Thank you, sir.